Hey, hello, welcome back, welcome back. If you happen to find yourself on AuthorTube today, then my name is Ella, and this is my channel where I talk about writing, laugh a lot, and edit badly. And I'm wearing a sweater vest today, and that's how you know that I'm a real writer. And I just finished the second marking period of my high school year. And that means I finished my half a year creative writing course. So I thought that I would come on here and I would talk about what I learned because it was a very interesting, fun course, and I did some writing in it. This is my channel where I talk about writing and laugh a lot and edit badly. So you can expect all of that from this video. Please subscribe and like if you want, Trying to get to 30 subscribers, so if we get there, then I'll sell my soul. So the beginning of the year was mostly just introductions to the course. We did do this writing exercise where we would write something and then pass it on to the next person and they would add on, but I'm not going to really go through that much because it was just an exercise and none of them were that memorable except for this one where this kid couldn't stop throwing up. Like, that was the whole story. And it was just throwing up food that he never ate. It was really gross. Then we would read and annotate and talk about these stories. Unfortunately, for my teacher, my class was not big on the whole talking part of class. We would mostly just sit still and stare up at the board because we didn't know anything about anything. We were just all a very quiet bunch. And it was a very interesting class because we didn't talk, and my teacher would want us to talk, and we just wouldn't say anything, and we'd all just get increasingly annoyed. It was a good time. But the first project we worked on pretty early in the year was a horror flash fiction. A flash fiction is a short piece of writing, I think typically under 1,000 words. We wrote that. I wrote a story called The Darkness Swallows You Whole. It actually recently won an honorable mention for the regional scholastic writing competition, so that's a fun fact. And I really like this short story. I definitely think I was playing it safe because whenever I want to write something and that's something someone's going to read, I make it very descriptive, almost very poetic because I'm much more comfortable sharing my poetry than I am like my fictional work. I'm very insecure when it comes to my dialogue. I used to be very bad at dialogue, and no matter how much I improve, I'm always afraid that it's still going to suck. So this was a piece. It had no dialogue. It followed a nameless, genderless character who is tied to a chair in the middle of just darkness. You can't see anything around you. It's written in second person. And you're just sitting there silently in a chair, wondering what's happening, what's lurking beyond. And while you're there, you get a bunch of flashbacks to your past, and you realize you're kind of reliving that, almost. And at the end, it ends with you screaming. Because you realize that this is basically just it's eternal torture. Like, it's more like intellectual, it's more metaphorical, and it's very convoluted. It is extremely pretentious. But I find that a lot of stuff I write is. My teacher now, that he has read some of my work, describes it as dark psychological, and I would say that is pretty accurate, because it was a good reflection of what I wrote. It wasn't necessarily horror-based. It was very psychological with just a dark aesthetic. So what did I learn from this piece? I learned that people are usually confused when you just write 2 pages of dialogue. I mean, not dialogue, description, and then somebody screaming. Understandable. And I also really don't play it safe. Don't be afraid to go where you want to go. Because I do think there's so many stories in my head that I want to tell that I was just scared to. And I wrote this, and I played it safe. But I did edit it a lot to where I felt like it was better, and it was a bit less convoluted, a little bit more clear, and a little bit more effective. So I'm very happy with it. I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud that it won an honorable mention, because I think that is definitely something to cheer for. So the next thing that we worked on that was big was writing a short story. We got to pick anything that it was about, any genre. Basically, the only limitation was that it had to be at least 5 pages, and mine was 6 pages. It was a story that I talked about in my favorite things I wrote in 2020. I called it Goodbye. It was originally titled Bittersweet. I originally wrote this story about this woman who was so haunted about the idea that death was coming for her, so when she invited all of her family members to a dinner party, and then she said, I want one of you to kill me, and you will get all of my assets. But she turns it into a game where they have to chase her around her huge mansion because she wants the person who kills her to be worthy of her assets. And I honestly genuinely like that idea. I just think my execution of it was super poor. So I did change my idea, because again, it was a very dialogue-based story, a very character and plot-focused, and I was more comfortable in just writing long descriptions about nothing, and I was very scared to turn that in, so I didn't. Am I proud of myself for this? No, but do I think what I came out with was better? Hi. I have to film a video. Want to say hi? Want to say hi to my 22 subscribers? He said hi. Again, I wrote this nameless, genderless, appearanceless characters. And if you want to go more in depth of what it's about, I do recommend that you watch my favorite things I wrote in 2020 video. I think I talk a lot about my different writing pieces that I'm proud of. But basically it's a letter about this one person, why they have to kill this other person. And one thing I definitely learned about this is you have to be very clear with what you're doing, because it was very unclear with these characters. It was very unclear what the conflict was. It seemed like this one character's kind of counting like how they met and different aspects of them, like falling in love, because it did come off romantic. I did not mean it to be romantic. I meant it to be more of a friendship, like a tight friendship, because I do not like writing romance. But it did come off a bit more on the romantic side. I did edit it to be less like that. And just be more clear about what's happening. It was very confusing. But I did do that. And also, my teacher gave me a very good advice, which is if you're trying to write something that is metaphorical or allegorical, don't try and write a metaphor. Try and write the story, and the metaphor will come naturally. And that was very helpful to me, who was literally writing this whole story, like, in metaphors. And it is very much more effective now. It actually includes small amounts of dialogue, so you can see me starting to be more comfortable with what I'm doing. The descriptions are still there. It is still very convoluted, still extremely pretentious. May I add, more pretentious than the last one? I mean, anything that ends with, I'm sorry I have to do this, I'm sorry I have to kill you, or it leads me to such a philosophical question. Which one of us deserves to live and which one of us deserves to die? And I'm like, neither of you, you're both really annoying. Between these and the next writing exercise I'm talking about, we did exercises in point of view, dialogue, and instructional narratives. My instructional narrative is called How to Be Nobody, and I'm so proud of it. I actually don't call it a story now. I call it like a spoken word or a slam poem, because that's kind of what I wrote it as. It is honestly, I have a very emotional connection to it. I think it is written very much from the heart. I read it in front of my class, and everybody really liked it, and that made me happy. That was really fun for me. I didn't know what an instructional narrative was. It's basically a story, but it's being told as instructions. It's written in the second person, saying, like, you should do this, and it often has an underlying meaning. And that was very, very welcoming to me, who loved underlying meanings and themes, and everything convoluted and pretentious, which is what everything I write is. So, can you not tell? I'm wearing a sweater vest and you're not. Or you could be. I don't know. I can't see through the camera. Sorry, and the other favorite thing I wrote that wasn't like an actual, it was just an exercise, the point of view exercise. Basically, we had some dialogue between two characters for the same, and we had to write it into 3 scenarios. It was like, hi, hello, sorry I'm late, it's fine. No, really, I'm sorry, it's fine. Okay, good night, good night. And we had to write that into a bunch of different situations, and one of the situations was somebody visiting their dying friend in the hospital, and that is what I wrote, and I think it is, like, very detailed and, like, sad, and I love it so much. I just think it was, because it's not something I usually write. It felt a lot more like contemporary and simplistic. And I used to write a lot of simplistic contemporary stuff, and I kind of want to get more into it, because writing convoluted stuff is convoluted, and it messes with your head. I never know what to think of my own writing. I never know what other people are going to think. But that piece was very fun for me. It was, yeah. So the last thing we wrote, I actually just turned it in yesterday, was a myth readaptation. We had to choose a myth, a piece of folklore, or a fairy tale, and just make an adaptation of it. This was so hard for me. Oh my god. It was impossible. Originally, I was doing the myth of Apollo, Hyacinth, and Zephyrus, where they were in a love triangle that ends with murder via discus. But I don't like writing romance. And the whole, like, murder plot, it was, because it was changed into this like, coming-of-age story where this dude accidentally kills his best friend who he was secretly in love with. And I hated it. Oh, it was so uncomfy. It was so underthought. I kept just trying to write around the romance because I didn't like writing the actual romance. And it ended up being way too long and just way too much. It was a simplistic contemporary, but I did not have fun writing it. I felt obligated to write it. And 2 days before my final draft was turned in, I rewrote an entirely different story. This time, it was an adaptation of Bloody Mary, where Mary is this girl worshipped by a cult who believes that if she drinks the blood of the deceased, then their soul will be purified, basically. And she kind of goes a bit insane, because everyone grows up telling her that she is, like, an unblemished soul, and she is an angel, and they worship her, and one day she will be able to fly, but she basically just goes insane, and it ends with her trying to drink her own blood to purify her soul, and she bleeds out to death after she basically kills everybody else. A lot of stuff happens in it. I really, really loved this story. I wrote it in 1 day, so I edited it also in a short amount of time. And it was so much fun because it was gory, but it was very, like, simplistically written. It was not convoluted. It was not as pretentious. It was more like written like a messed up fairy tale. I entitled this story, She Once Was a Girl, and unfortunately I did not get any critiques on it, considering I wrote it 2 days before it was due. So, I don't really have anything, but what I think that is the most, like, adventurous story, and this whole, like, journey I went into of actually writing, like, getting out of my shell and writing stuff I was uncomfortable with writing really grew, although I did scratch that one story. I love how the things that I'm uncomfortable writing is dialogue and plot. Like, you must be so confused. I promise my short stories actually make sense. But actually, according to my teacher, they don't. So, who knows? Okay, I'm just kidding. I should go now because that's basically what I learned and what I did, and that's basically what I learned and what I did in my high school creative writing class. So if you want to hear more about what I write or just my weird talking, then you can all subscribe to my channel and like this video and maybe even leave a comment about anything. Fruit? I like fruit. What is your opinion on bananas and apricots? Okay. Okay. Have a nice day. I will see you sometime, eventually, whenever I decide to film next.